Lasso. So this afternoon we turn to the culmination of this whole series of discursive meditations we've been doing in the afternoon, starting with self-directed loving kindness, moving right on through to the extraordinary resolve, Ajahshaya, and now Bodhicitta. And when we listen to the definition of it, it sounds, I guess, very religious, very esoteric, very abstract, frankly, to achieve perfect enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. I'd like to just bring this right back down to the ground, right down to the root, to our fundamental desire, most basic desire, primitive, primal desire we share in common with all sentient beings. And that is, if we're suffering, especially if it's blatant, it's evident, that's the first thing that catches our attention, in my experience anyway. If I'm really in pain, physically or mentally, that's what captures my attention more than anything else. And I want it to go away. Yeah? So I think I have a lot of company. But then imagine, it's one of those surges, one of those upheavals of pain or suffering, mental suffering that arises. And like a wave, imagine it comes up, but then it does subside, and I get my wish. I was suffering, and now I'm okay again. There's this nice phrase in Tibetan, yungwa, which means, that's what it is. Uk is your breath, as jungwa is releasing. So if you're suffering, we tend to contract, don't we? When we're suffering, fight or flight, but we contract, and we may hold the breath. We're feeling like that, and then relief. It's a breath of relief, a release of breath of relief. We all know that, yeah? But then there's something nagging at the back of the mind that doesn't give us satisfaction. I mean, I'm just speaking first person here. You see whether it resonates. But I'm not satisfied. The suffering is over. The drama, the climax, the big problem is over. But then there's something nagging in the back of the mind, and that is, maybe it will come back. And maybe it will come back worse. And therefore I'm not really content, because it could at any time, and I have so little control over anything that I'm kind of looking around. Where is it going to come from next? So I'm not at ease. I'm ill at ease, because I don't feel safe. It's nice that that bout or that upheaval of suffering or pain is over, but I know I'm vulnerable. I mean, we just know that. And so I don't feel at ease. I don't feel I can really totally relax. So I've been telling you, relax, relax, relax. You might as well tell me I can't. Until you tell me a way to be totally free of suffering in the future as well, then I can relax. Because until then, I need to be, as they say in fencing, en garde. I need to be careful. I need to watch out. Don't know where it's coming from. Could be a little old lady. They can be dangerous. Look so innocent on the outside. They can be very dangerous. Never know where it's coming from. And so that wish to be free of suffering isn't going to be satisfied until I don't have to be anxious anymore. Because I don't want it to come back. Right? So there's one wish. But of course also something happens, especially when that blatant suffering subsides, and we find out that there's such a thing as pleasure. Physical pleasure, mental pleasure, and I like that. I like it. I want it. And then on occasion we get it. Whatever seems to give us some pleasure, physical, mental, maybe a combination of both, we get it. Then we're happy. Then I'm happy. I got what I wanted. I wanted some pleasure and I got it. But then there's again a nagging in the back of the mind. I may lose it. How long can I hold on? Who's going to take it from me? Or will I just get old? How can I hold on to this? I want to keep it. But I'm afraid I can't. Other people, I can see some of you are really getting old. I'm afraid I might one day too. I wouldn't like that. Because old people don't have nearly as much fun as young people. So I can't really be happy and at ease, at rest, unless I know I can be happy and not lose it. Because if I lose it, I'm going to be right back where I was, and I wasn't happy then. If I'm not happy, then I'm not happy. And I'm not getting what I wanted, because I got that flavor of I can be happy, but then I don't have it anymore. I want it back, but I don't want to lose it. And I think this is primal. When the Dalai Lama said our most primal energy or urge is caring. And then we say, well, what do you care about? I could say, well, for starters, this. If I'm suffering, I care. I can't help it. I don't want to suffer. And I don't want it to come back. And if I find some happiness, I want to keep it. And I'd like more. I've noticed that too. That if I get happiness, I say, well, this is good, but maybe it could be better. Maybe it could be a bit better. And I'd like it better. I'd like better. And wherever I am, I'd like better. Right? I don't think I'm alone, right? So there it is. I think we've just defined the sentient part of sentient being. And we human beings, with our big frontal cortex, with our exceptional intelligence, way enormously beyond anything we possibly need for survival and procreation, gives us a lot of imagination about overcoming suffering and finding happiness. We find the great works of architecture, of engineering, of technology, of art, of philosophy, of religion. So many of humanity's achievements and accomplishments are just showing our incredible ingenuity, our creativity. But it really boils down to one thing, or two things, free of suffering. So Francis Bacon, one of the great giants of the scientific revolution, together with Descartes, with Galileo, Kepler, and others. But Francis Bacon was actually not a scientist. He was in law, but actually a very deep philosopher and a very creative thinker about this new philosophy, this experimental philosophy that was coming up, which we call science. His ideas were very influential. The New Atlantis. He envisioned he saw something was happening. He saw something was happening. Like a Steve Jobs is thinking, computers might catch on. Or the next one I've been hearing in the wind, and I think it's probably true, virtual reality might just catch on. Might just catch on. It might just turn out to be the greatest escape that human beings have ever invented for themselves, to escape from reality they don't like, to go in a completely make-believe one that seems incredibly real. So in any case, Francis Bacon was one of those. He thought this could catch on, this natural philosophy, this experimental philosophy. And then he was envisioning, what's it good for? Why shall we do it? Because he was a deep thinker and he thought a lot about this. And I must say, I think he was in many respects quite an admirable thinker. He, like everybody else of his generation, all the pioneers of modern science, were all Christian. They're all Christian. And by and large, pretty devout. Descartes, Galileo, Kepler, theologian. Kepler was a theologian. Copernicus was a theologian. They were they were very religious people. Newton was very religious. And so this is a major drive that's going on there. And so Francis Bacon also. And to cut it short here, he envisioned what could this natural philosophy, this experimental philosophy be good for? And he said, well, and I'm paraphrasing here, there are great scholars of Francis Bacon, and I'm not one of them. But what I recall from my reading was, we suffer a lot because of nature. From plagues, from drought, from famine, from just natural catastrophes, acts of God, but just nature. Nature was not a warm and cuddly place that you cordon off and that you go and watch the deer. Nature was a place with wolves and scary things. It was threatening. And that was in Europe, let alone when the Europeans came over to North America. Then it was really pretty scary. And he said, the more we can understand about the natural world, the more we can protect ourselves from it. We can feel safe. Safer than we have in the past. And moreover, we may use this new natural philosophy to find greater happiness. And of course, what he meant by that was exactly hedonic happiness. Because he, like all his Christian fellows, didn't look to science for eudaimonia. They already had Christianity, for heaven's sakes. They had 1,500 years of Christianity. That's a long track record of emphasis on eudaimonia, which had ever, at least since the time of Augustine, was a very important theme in Christian theology. adopted from the Greeks. And so there it was. It was quite a lofty vision that we should use this, what we call nowadays science, we should use this for the benefit of humanity, that we can be freer from suffering and find greater happiness. And he meant exactly hedonia. Because for religion, they were covered. They didn't need to invent a new religion. They had one they considered was perfectly fine as it was. But they were suffering in the hedonia part. And bear in mind, this is also, I think it's easy to forget, this is right in the middle of this psychosis of the witch hunting era from 1400 to 1750, right in the middle of that, where it was really terrifying a lot of people. If you have a mother, you have an aunt, you have a wife, you have a daughter, and they display some unusual ability, be afraid. Be afraid. It was tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of women, executed because of, they suspected, and better safe than sorry, kill them, because it's probably demonic possession. In the midst of that, to the notion of disenchanting nature, which Descartes did and Newton did very, very well, of just giving us a nice clean slate on the outside world, of matter in motion, following law-like activity, which if that's all it is, okay, it's still a scary place, and there's still earthquakes and hurricanes and drought and famine. But we can get on top of that, and science can help. But men, when there are demons out there, how does science help that? How do we protect ourselves from that? I think it was freaking them out. That's my interpretation. Freaking out a lot of people, and that was for all of Europe, and of course it went over to America. I don't think Australia got much of this, maybe none. Oh, you were fortunate. But we got a bit of it in the early 17th century in North America. So there it is. Well, coming back then, science is response. All of science is a response. And I think it is now in the 21st century. Even though theology is kind of pretty much unhinged from science and so forth. Science is still a noble attempt in many, many ways to free us from suffering, to protect us from suffering, and to enable us to find greater hedonic well-being. That's good. That's good. I have no criticism at all. Nothing. I'm grateful. I find this very useful. Kind of a nuisance sometimes, but my cell phone, yes, useful. I like. And so, we come back to this basic desire. I want to be free from suffering and not have to be anxious about the future. And that is, I want to continue to be free of suffering. And I want to find happiness, and what happiness I find I want to keep. Don't want to be anxious about losing it. And I'm afraid I will. But it's not only that. I want to be happier. I don't know that that's common for all sentient beings, but I think it is common for many, many human beings, and I'm certainly one of them. So now, I think I'm going to ask a very deep question, which I don't think is asked very often. Why? So why? Why do we have this aspiration? If we look into evolutionary biology, we come up with two motivations, survive and procreate. Again, I would say, why? What's the big deal? You survive, you don't survive. You're not going to survive after a while anyway. It's a lost cause. So why do you want to survive longer? We're only talking about years or decades here. So what's the big deal? You die when you're 20, you die when you're 15, you die when you're 90. What's the big deal? You're going to die anyway. So why this lust for life, this sometimes monumental drive to survive, to battle cancer, to battle the odds, to overcome great adversity, and survive. We've seen countless narratives of individuals and communities who just show staggering courage to survive, right? Why? They're going to die anyway. What's the big deal? Right? And to procreate? Well, okay. But what's the big deal? I mean, how many species would really care if all of the human beings suddenly vanished? And I thought about it, and what I came up with, dogs. Not cats. I don't think so. They would say, "Oh, no food. I'll handle it. I'm on it." They go feral about overnight, you know. But I saw one of these dogs. My stepdaughter has one. They're a little puffball of fur. Have you seen this one out there? You know this one cannot survive on their own. It's a little puffball. It looks like a toy. You're looking for the key on the back of it. I saw one today. They're incredibly cute, but they don't quite look like they're even canine. They look like they're fur that walks around in a really cute way. That little creature will not survive on its own. And so if the woman who owns that dog dies, that creature will be very sad because food suddenly has vanished and that little dog, that's about the end of its hunting instincts. And then they die, they're going to be out. That'll be it. So dogs will miss us. But all the other creatures, I think they would all... Thank goodness they're finally gone. Really, I'm serious, All of them will breathe a sigh of relief if we're gone. We think our presence here is pretty important. I don't think any other species, except for the poodles and, the Cocker Spaniels and so forth, they'll miss us. But then they won't survive, so they won't miss us for long. Then they'll be gone. They'll just go extinct. But why? Why? Why do we wish to perpetuate? Why do we wish to keep it going? It's not all that pleasant. Aging, sick, and death is no fun. So where's it coming from? The desire to be happy. Where did it come from in the first place? I can easily imagine evolution taking place with no feelings. Just a program. Just a program. Food, go after it. Eat. Suffering, run away. No feelings at all. I can imagine that. That's a program. You can program robots to do that. You don't have to give them feelings. Give them a program. If something endangers them, have them fight back or run. That's a program. They don't need any feelings for that. So what do we need feelings for? And I just don't see any answer in evolutionary biology, why we should have feelings. Or some are even asking why you have to be even conscious. A robot doesn't have to be conscious to get by. Just program it. It doesn't need to be conscious. All it needs to do is respond to stimuli, unconsciously, mindlessly. Robots can do that. No need to introduce either consciousness nor feelings. But we have both. All sentient beings have both. And so I just do not see an adequate explanation looking purely at biology why any species would want to perpetuate itself or survive, except we just do. But that's not an answer. That's just observing something that's there, but it gives no explanatory power. So very briefly, I have tremendous admiration, respect for Darwin and for Alfred Russel Wallace, the co-discoverer, developer of the theory of evolution. Powerful, great explanatory power. That's what it's good for. Great explanatory power to understand us as humans, as Homo sapiens sapiens, in our animal nature. Because you can look at our bodies and we're definitely primates. We rather look like naked chimps. Probably not as attractive as them from their perspective. But nevertheless, it's all relative, right? Those tall, skinny, naked chimpanzees is just disgusting. Let alone when they get old, then it's really disgusting. I think an old chimp looks much better than an old human being. Don't you think so? When was the last time you saw a pot-bellied chimp? When really? They tend to keep their figure pretty well. In any case, in terms of our animal nature, and we certainly know we have a lot in common with other primates, other mammals, other warm-blooded creatures, and then other animals of all kinds, a lot in common. But I just do not see evolutionary biology having any explanatory power, really at all, to explain what is utterly distinctive and unique about our species. Our intelligence, for starters. I've spoken with world-class biologists. They've never given me any explanation that was satisfying. Why do we have so much more intelligence than we possibly need? I mean, we're talking orders upon orders of magnitude. The intelligence, the creativity, our powers for virtue, our capacity for virtue, for selflessness. So, okay, you've explained us as animals, but I'm sorry, that's not the whole story. Get real. So now we ask the question again, why do we care? And I'm going to give a hypothesis. Buddha nature. It's a Buddhist term, okay? How about pristine awareness? How about primordial consciousness? That's the source. That's the root. That's the fundamental ground of both. And they are inextricably intertwined and non-dual. Consciousness and caring. We are aware of ourselves, our environment, and we care. And I think it's wisdom and method. And it's right there in the Buddha nature. And I think that's the source. It's the only source that actually makes sense to me. It has explanatory power. And of course, all sentient beings have it. But we human beings, especially human beings having a precious, fully endowed human life with the 8 types of leisure, the 10 types of endowment, then we are able to really fully manifest that which is distinctive and magnificent and tremendously high potential about being a human being. That we can use this exceptional intelligence, this imagination, our ability to pass on lineage of knowledge 2,000 years old, 2,500 years old, 3,000 years old, actually able to pass that on from generation to generation. Chimpanzees don't do that. Dolphins don't do that. No other species does that. This conveying of culture, of knowledge, of heritage, of wisdom, and learning, and having the potential to grow from generation to generation and from decade to decade in individual life. So if we consider that as a working hypothesis, this is actually not just some theological belief. I've never actually heard maybe I have, can't even remember, whether I've heard some Lama say this is the source, but I think it's kind of obvious it is. But now to turn that into something empirical, something that we can actually put to the test of experience, make useful, and not just have an abstract religious belief. Let's imagine that's the case. Working hypothesis, imagine that. That the very root of our desire to be free of suffering and to remain free of suffering, which is to say, to find liberation from suffering and its causes, and the desire to find happiness and greater happiness, and will continue to want greater happiness until there's no possibility of anything higher, and not want to lose it, because who wants to go on a big vacation and then just be broke at the end of the day? That's not satisfying. So we want a level of happiness that just opens so it can't be any higher, and we don't want to lose it. I think that's built in. That's primal, that's right there in our fundamental desire for happiness, those two. But of course we're not, none of us human beings, and many other warm-blooded creatures as well, are not just after our own well-being. It's normal for human beings to care about at least some other human beings. It's normal. It's actually, there's a biological imperative. Most mothers don't have much choice about whether they care for their children. There are some deviants, some, maybe serious problems, but they don't care. But the norm, we all know. Parents, mothers especially, but parents, fathers often, I think it's more normal than not, naturally, spontaneously, effortlessly care deeply about their children's well-being, that they're free of suffering, that they find happiness. It's not at all uncommon, as we all know, for parents to be willing to make major sacrifices of their own well-being for the sake of their children. Nobody raises their eyebrows and say, oh, how amazing. It happens so often that we think, well, they're really good parents, but no Nobel Prize. They're just really good parents. And not only for one's children, but for one's loved ones, could be very dear friends, spouse, partner, mate, very common. Love of parents is not universal, but it's common. Siblings, especially in traditional cultures, the strong sense of identification with, the affinity, the sense of my family, including extended family. Mexico 100 years ago, I think. Yeah, Mexico 100 years. Extended family, the big houses. And having, this is the family, this is the family. And auntie is taking care of the kids, and that was common. It wasn't just Mexico, it was Tibet, it was everywhere. Big houses, not because they're all rich, but they consider probably 3 generations will live there. Right? And so the sense of kinship and the sense of your blood family, your biological family, but then also in tough environments like Tibet, tough place to live, high altitude and all of that. I've known many, many Tibetans who were raised in Tibet, and a sense of identity with, the kinship with the people of your village, from your region, very strong, very strong. So you're from Kham, yeah, but what part of Kham? Oh, not Diukham. Diukham. Oh, you're from Diukham. Ah, my uncle's from Diukham. You're from that region of Kham. Very, very common, very common. Strong identity. Oh, then you can tell it immediately. Oh, but we speak the same dialect. We don't just speak the Kham dialect. We speak Diukham dialect, and then we know. I think in England for a long time, still to some extent, still the same. You'll know the town. You might even know what part of the city. If it's London, you know what part of the city. And there's a kinship there, right? And so this is all biological. But now, as His Holiness Dalai Lama has said, and I think it's so important and deep and true, and that is, all right, we have a biological imperative for the great majority of us to care for someone beyond ourselves. Okay? Beyond ourselves. It could be also for our pets, our livestock, our flock, that also. To a certain extent, then, to the sentient beings we own or we're taking care of or we're in charge of, family, livestock. Of course, women were regarded as possessions for a very long time. They still are in some parts of the globe. It's biological. But then there's a point where biology stops. It's where you're not part of my region. You're not part of my group. You're on the other side, right? And now that natural, spontaneous, effortless, biological imperative of caring has now tapered off. And if the other side threatens my side, me or anything I identify with, my possessions, my herds, my family, then let alone empathy, sorry, here's my gun, get out of the way, or die. That's normal. And chimpanzees do it, wolves do it, we share that. Yeah. And so as the Dalai Lama said, okay, the biological goes this far, and then it stops. It just goes cold, right? Because there's the other side, and the other side may be a threat. Probably will be sooner or later. When food gets scarce, oil runs out, water runs out, natural resources run out, medicine runs out. So that's the story of humanity. So His Holiness has commented then, where does Dharma come in? And Dharma comes in where we take that natural urge, that natural flow of caring that comes effortlessly and it is biologically conditioned. And then, here's a phrase you've heard of before, break down the barriers. It goes this far, but then it stops. Okay? Well, then start practicing loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, equanimity, and start breaking down the barriers. You're a demolition crew. To break down the barriers of my side and your side until my side is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Until all the barriers down, and then it's all my side. Not mine as in I'm the most important. It's just that there's no other. That we're all family, and we're all of the same family. And I'm not in charge, but this is my family. Right? And that's where this immeasurable loving kindness, compassion comes in. The barriers are down. And Dharma does that. Biology won't get us there. There's no evidence it's even moving us in that direction. Biology says it's fine, the barriers are just fine, take care of your side. But Dharma says the boundaries are artificial and they are not conducive to your well-being. If you want to satisfy that primal desire to be free of suffering and to remain free of suffering, and that primal desire to find happiness, keep it, and find more, then this is not a good strategy. I mean, history has proven it. This doesn't work out very well. These strong demarcations, my side, your side. Look at the history of Europe. It's a history of warfare. Including now. It's a history of warfare, and all based on my side, your side. We're Danes, we're not Muslims. We're English, we're not anybody else. We are English. I say that with affinity. Got a lot of English blood in me, but there it is. So coming back to Bodhicitta, we have to wrap this up. Bodhicitta seems, I'm going to be really coldly analytical now. Bodhicitta seems the logical conclusion of our primal desire. If you're serious, you want to actually fulfill it. What Tsongkhapa calls the eternal longing. Durme Dumba, the Lamso Namsum, 3 principles of the path. Fulfill your eternal longing, my child. You remember it? It's right towards the end. Fulfill your eternal longing, my child. Brings tears to the eyes. Because he totally nails it. This is your eternal longing. You've always wanted to be free of suffering and forever free of suffering. And we call that liberation. We call that moksha. We call that nirvana. And you've always wanted to be happy. but happier and happier until there is no upper limit, and you never want to lose it. And that's called bodhi, and that's called awakening. But we already sense, even biologically, that none of us exists as an island, none of us is independent. We know that on some level, maybe on many levels. In which case, just following the straight logic of it, if I want to be free, and I want to find such fulfillment, it makes no sense logically to pursue this for the sake of myself alone. Because I don't exist alone. Never have. Never can. My very being here, right down to the core of being a sentient being, right down to the core of Buddha nature, is non-dual from everybody else's Buddha nature. Has to take into account everybody else. And that means literally everybody else. There can't be demarcations, even my solar system and your solar system. My galaxy, your galaxy. Increase their technology, as we've seen in science fiction, and you'll have galactic warfare. The Andromeda versus the Milky Way, you know? Oh, it's awful. Damn you Andromedans! And of course they just ridicule us, you know, like we're all eating Milky Ways. Stupid hedonic chocolate fanatics, you Milky Way stupid people. You know, but what can imagine, you know, just imagine hedonic going galactic, and then you have galactic warfare. Okay, we've seen that in science fiction. The only thing that's preventing us is we don't have enough technology yet to starting intergalactic warfare. We would, though, if we get a chance. They probably won't even look like us. Terrible. So Bodhicitta then, number one, for our own well-being, for our own sake, to achieve complete and irreversible freedom from suffering and its causes, and to achieve the highest possible, that is to say, boundless, sense of well-being that is absolutely fulfilling. That comes only with the realization of Dharmakaya. You will not be satisfied until you come there. You won't be satisfied. Even if you achieve nirvana, something will stir you. You won't be satisfied. Something will stir you. You're not finished. So if you want to take that primal desire and actually fulfill it, well, Dharmakaya is the only thing that will do it. But of course, then you're not alone. Because we do care about others. We can't help it. And it's only a matter of where the boundaries are drawn, but you know, it goes out. And so if we wake up to the fact that the boundaries are all artificial, and we will find our own fulfillment if and only if all those boundaries dissolve, and the sense of caring goes out unimpededly in all directions, then we'll be satisfied, fully satisfied, only with the realization of Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. And that is to be effortlessly able to serve all sentient beings until they're all free, and each one's brought to enlightenment. And our fundamental desire won't be fulfilled until we realize the three bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Until then, we'll still be restless. So I see bodhicitta as not just kind of like some little thing of Mahayana Buddhism, some peculiar little religious thing. I see it as primal, fundamental, cosmic. So when Geshe Ngawantagye was teaching us this, I remember early on, I saw the enormity of it. I mean, it's kind of obvious. I can achieve perfect enlightenment of a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I saw the enormity of that. And it's rooted in this absolute reversal of caring for others more than oneself. And I was intimidated by it. I just thought, this is so high. I don't think I'm ready for that. And Geshe Ngawantagye said, never too soon to cultivate bodhicitta. Do not think it's too high. Start cultivating it today. Take the Bodhisattva precepts now. You'll never regret it. And it's never too soon. Because this is the only ticket out of town. The only ticket out of samsara that completely and irreversibly frees. Never too soon. Well, not so. That's my little introduction to bodhicitta. Let's cultivate it. This will be a guided meditation.